Congratulations for choosing the Kyosho HyperFly. Soon you'll be enjoying one of the greatest thrills available in radio control modeling, piloting your own helicopter. It's never been this easy before. Wondering what kind of performance to expect? With practice, you'll be able to climb, turn, and even hover in a headwind. After you've mastered normal forward flight maneuvers, you'll be able to experiment with such trademark heli-aerobatics as barrel rolls and pirouettes. You'll also be able to use your HyperFly skills to fly other types of RC aircraft. And this video gives you a great head start on all the action. We use the original HyperFly in our demonstrations, but if you've chosen the semi-scale HyperFly Apache, don't worry. All of the tips shown here in this video will work just as well on your helicopter. Wherever there are differences, we will point them out. No matter which model you bought, it came with an instruction manual, plus a yellow or green caution sheet to help you through several very critical steps. Please read and follow them both. If you don't, your helicopter won't fly properly. For now, though, let's just sit back and get to know your new helicopter, from how it works to how to prepare for that upcoming first flight. First, let's find out exactly what kind of radio you should use. Any aircraft frequency 2-channel radio system will work with the HyperFly, as long as it's a stick-style transmitter with servo reversing and a receiver with battery eliminator circuitry. Futaba makes several radio systems like this. They're highly recommended. Standard servos will fit perfectly into the HyperFly's servo mount, but you can adjust the mount if you'd rather use lightweight mini servos. There's more good news in store when you're ready to start building your model. No other RC helicopter puts you in the pilot seat so quickly. Much assembly has already been done for you at the factory, including rotor head assembly, the most difficult part of building any helicopter. The rotor head and main structure are also pre-built. Your model's design lets you reach the battery pack in seconds, just by popping off the canopy. It's powered by an included Le Mans AP29 motor, which is kept cool by a cooling flap in the base of the fuselage. The servos and push rods are located at the rear. Since they're out in the open, they're simple to install and easy to get at for maintenance. What you won't find in your HyperFly are a lot of complicated control systems that have to be adjusted while you fly. One example is there's no tail rotor, only a stabilizer plate that uses airflow to prevent spinning. The model flies at full power, so you won't need to worry about throttle adjustments, and the pitch of the rotor head stays fixed. That's why you need only 2 channels of control to fly. But in another respect, the HyperFly is like larger helicopters, and that's in how it steers. You're about to see how transmitter stick movement causes the servos to move the swash plate. Whatever direction the swash plate moves, so does the HyperFly. Move the stick forward and the swash plate moves forward for forward flight. Move the stick backward and the swash plate moves backward to climb or to stop forward motion. Right stick movement turns the model right, and left stick movement turns it left. It's exactly like working the elevator and aileron controls of a radio control airplane. So if you can fly a fixed-wing plane, you've already got the skills you need to fly this helicopter like a pro. Electric power makes it clean, quiet, and easy to operate. When you're ready to fly, you'll just pop in a charged battery pack. One lightweight 1100 milliamp hour NiCad, which is held in place by a simple nylon strap, powers both the receiver and the motor. Motor power is turned on and off by the HyperFly's automatic landing switch. With the switch down, power goes on, and you're ready to hand launch the model. Later, when the HyperFly lands, the switch is automatically pressed upward to shut off the motor. For rudder control, the HyperFly has this plastic tail stabilizer. It's simple, but it works. The flow of air during flight keeps the tail behind the nose, just like a weather vane. When you fly headfirst into 5 to 10 mile-per-hour winds, the stabilizer holds the model steady, and you can actually hover. Now that you know how the basics of your HyperFly work, it's time to get ready for your first flight. What accessories do you need? How much setup has to be done at the field? Let's answer these questions next. Here are the items you'll need to fly: a 2-channel radio system, a battery charger, Kyosho's HyperFly 7.2 volt 1100 milliamp hour NiCad battery pack, and of course the HyperFly itself, shown here mostly assembled. One of the last parts you'll install on the helicopter is the completed tail boom. The tail boom is easy to remove and reattaches quickly at the flying site. You may want to take it off the model before traveling so you'll have a more compact package to carry. Then at the field, you'll just install one screw, tighten the nut, and finally snap on the tail support wires. The rotor head is another unit that can be quickly attached to the HyperFly right at the flying site and removed for easier carrying there and back. Installation is a simple matter of bolting the head in place and then snapping on the linkages. Wait! while we're talking about the rotor head, you'll notice that the rotor installation step in your HyperFly instruction manual shows 2 grips for each blade. Those on the leading edge or left side are taller than those on the right. Make sure that you install the shims under the correct blade grip. If you don't, the blade's pitch will be off, and you'll pay the price with poor flight performance. Put 2 shims under each of the taller leading edge blade grips. Now your helicopter blades will be properly pitched. To install the battery, just set it in place and fasten the strap. Remember not to connect the plugs until you're ready to launch. Before you attempt your first flight, you'll need to set the HyperFly's neutral swash plate position. It's a critical step. The helicopter can't fly properly without it. Let's begin. Turn on your transmitter and make sure the HyperFly's landing switch is in the power off position. Then connect the battery plugs and make sure your transmitter sticks are in the neutral position. First, we'll set the neutral swash plate position for the elevator. View the helicopter from the left side and rotate the rotor head so that the linkages are positioned to the left and right. Line up the shorter vertical edge of your elevator template with the center line of the main mast, like you see here. Adjust the swash plate so it matches the angle of the template's bottom edge. On the HyperFly, the angle will be 15 degrees. On the HyperFly Apache, the angle will be only 3 degrees. If your swash plate doesn't line up with the template, refer to your instruction manual for adjustment procedures. Now we can set the neutral position for the aileron control. View the helicopter from the rear and rotate the rotor head 90 degrees. Line up the longer vertical edge of your aileron template with the center line of the main mast. Again, adjust the position of the swash plate to match the angle of the template's bottom edge. The swash plate should lean 5 degrees to the left for the HyperFly and 0 degrees for the HyperFly Apache. Again, refer to your instruction manual for further adjustment procedures. Recharging batteries at the site will require a Hobbyco Model 801 AC/DC charger. You can use a car battery or any other convenient 12-volt source to power it at the field. The HyperFly battery will usually be fully charged and ready to go in about 20 minutes. After installing a charged battery, reattach the HyperFly's canopy on its handy hook and loop fasteners. There, it won't be long now. Just need to see if the blades are tracking properly. Start by making sure that the landing switch is in the up or off position. Remember, it controls the motor power. Once you're sure that the motor can't start accidentally, turn on your transmitter. Then plug in the HyperFly battery and replace the canopy. Now check to see if your controls are working properly. Move the sticks on your transmitter. Does the swash plate respond with the right movements? If so, then safely hold your model at arm's length and move the landing switch into the down or on position. Please use caution to protect your hands and face from the spinning blades. Watching here from the side, you can see that the rotor blades are out of track. They're not lifting equally. You need to add pitch to the low blade. The color tape on the blade helps you identify which is low and which is high. To correct the tracking, always adjust only the low blade. Loosen its rotor grip and add pitch by twisting the grip up very carefully. Never twist the high blade down. Now you can retighten the rotor grip bolts and check the tracking again to see if you've solved the problem. As you can see, it worked. Both blades are lifting equally, so tracking is fine. And that's all there is to it. And now your HyperFly is ready for the sky. Generally, the last thing you'll do before you launch your model at the flying site is to install a charged battery pack and connect the plugs. Then you'll reattach HyperFly's canopy, and it's ready to hand launch. Have a co-pilot hold your model with a firm grip and at an arm's length for safety. Your helper should turn on the motor by pulling down the landing switch, and then wait for your signal to launch. For the best launch, the helicopter's nose should point below the horizon at about 15 degrees. It should be tossed gently into the air at about 60 degrees above the horizon, as shown. There it is, an easy, successful hand launch. Remember, always launch your model into the wind. Now you can let the HyperFly climb naturally. No matter where you position the controls of the transmitter, it tends to fly forward. To gain more altitude, all you need to do is pull back on the left stick of your transmitter, the elevator stick. See how the model climbs? Of course, you'll also notice that the helicopter flies a little more slowly while it's gaining altitude. If you think this footage of the HyperFly in action is exciting, imagine how much fun it will be when you're the one working the controls. Like two-channel airplanes, the HyperFly can make turns as wide or as sharp as you like. It's easiest to make turns in relatively weak winds. With downwind turns and higher winds, The HyperFly may initially lose altitude, but it will quickly be regained, especially after the next turn into the wind. One of the best ways to exercise your turning skills is to send the model through a series of figure eights. It's great practice. You'll increase your coordination at the controls, and you'll gain confidence in yourself and in your helicopter. Right-hand turns like these are especially easy for the HyperFly. With a little experience, you'll be able to impress your friends with tight, low-altitude turns that look a lot more risky than they really are. Of course, left-hand turns are easy too. To make any turn, start by moving the aileron stick on your transmitter. Right for a right turn, left for a left turn. Then pull back on the elevator stick to keep the HyperFly's nose level. It's best to practice your figure eights in winds no higher than 5 miles per hour. Face into the wind and start with a right-hand turn. Make each turn across the wind. In winds of at least 5 miles per hour, you can also make your HyperFly hover by balancing its forward speed and its rate of climb. Here's how. Point your model into the wind, then slowly work the elevator stick up or down. Soon you'll find the position that makes the helicopter sit still and hover. Wind will still be flowing past the tail stabilizer to hold the model steady. After about 2.5 minutes of flight, the HyperFly will be ready to land. In strong winds, it's easiest to hover above the landing point and let the model gently drop as the battery gets weaker. All you do is guide her in. The instant the model touches down, its landing switch is forced up and the motor automatically shuts off. In calm conditions, you can land the HyperFly just like an airplane by using the elevator control during forward flight to gradually come down. And again, as soon as the model hits the ground, motor power automatically stops. Landing in grass is as easy as landing on a paved site. The only difference is you'll need to keep up a little more forward momentum as you touch down. Once you've landed, the first thing to do is to disconnect the HyperFly's battery. And then you turn off the transmitter. To be absolutely safe, never pick up the helicopter without making sure the landing switch stays up. After a few flights, you'll be piloting your HyperFly successfully without giving it a second thought. The proper controls and procedures will all seem completely natural. With practice, you'll even be sending your HyperFly through incredible loops and stall turns. It's an amazing machine, and we've only touched on what can be done here. So, you've seen how the HyperFly works. You've seen how little assembly you'll have to do. You've seen how fast you can be ready to fly once you get to the flying site, and you've learned the basics of HyperFly control. There's really only one thing left to do. Get out there and have fun!